Okay, so hello everyone.
Hello.
Um, Nice to see you guys here. I'm Carolina. I go by Carol for short, and I'm one of the principal teachers for the Astro Butterfly School. I see some familiar faces, so I know some of you have taken classes with us before. Um, this is an information session basically about the certification course that we're offering starting in January. So I'm just gonna go through what the course consists of, and hopefully answer any questions that you might have about it if you're, because presumably you're considering joining us. So I am one of the main teachers for that program as well, and I've been teaching it for a few years, and personally, it's one of my favorite courses. So hope to see you there. I'm going to share my screen here. Mm -mm. There we go. Okay. So, um, the Astro Butterfly Wings PRO. And feel free to also drop any questions in the chat box. I say that and I can no longer see the chat box. Nice. Huh. Let me open the chat box. There it is. Okay. So yeah, if any questions that have come up, you're welcome to put them in the chat box or interrupt me, and I'm always happy to answer questions. And I stopped sharing the screen. Okay, so my chat box disappears when I do that. And it's back. Okay. Jasmine, you're jumping the gun. Okay, I'll get to that. I'll get to that question definitely at the end. So this is the 10-week program for the upper intermediate and advanced students. So that's kind of point one. This is the course for you if you want to, improve your chart reading skills, or become a professional astrologer. So whether you're an enthusiast who wants to keep studying and improve your technical skills and get more practice, or you're considering going pro, this course is definitely gonna help you with either of those goals. It helps you connect the dots and determine what's truly relevant in a chart versus what's a nice detail. It helps you, will help you give readings that are empowering, relevant, help the client with their actual life changes. And hopefully, I think the main goal, and definitely something that most people say about the course, is that it helps you gain confidence in your natal chart reading capacities. It's the program's developed specifically for intermediate and upper intermediate students, really. So how do you know if you're an intermediate student? Okay, so for this course, really you need to have a solid understanding of the meanings of planets, signs, houses, and aspects. Okay, so coming in doesn't mean, that you're immediately literate everything, but you've got to be able to understand how to read glyphs for the most part, understand what the different planets mean, signs, houses, and aspects. So if I say, for example, someone has Venus and Sagittarius in the 8th house conjunct Neptune, you should generally understand what that means. And that's kind of the starting base that we expect people to have for this course. The program is going to give you lots and lots of practice reading and interpreting charts, because I realize like a big issue when you're kind of in the intermediate level is starting to become fluent in all of it. Like you kind of know the parts and starting to put it all together. So there's a ton of information in the program. So regardless of where you're starting out from, whether you consider yourself kind of upper intermediate or already advanced, can pretty much guarantee you'll be learning new things. And you're going to finish the 10 weeks feeling significantly more competent with interpreting astrological archetypes, really. The course is broken up into 10 different modules over 10 weeks. So it's a 10-week course, 10 different modules. Each module is quite action-packed. The first pillar, so the first 3 modules really, these focus on synthesis. Okay, so it's about synthesizing the information that you see in a natal chart. From there, we move on to pillar 2, where we zoom into specific placements using more advanced techniques like essential dignities, house rulerships, dispositors, asteroids, fixed stars, that kind of thing. I'll get into a little bit more detail about it. And finally, we end with a more in-depth study of predictive techniques. So that's transits, progressions, solar arcs, solar returns, annual perfections. So it's a lot. And it's a great course. Yeah. So pillar one, it really it takes screenshots for yeah, feel free to take screenshots. I think that we'll probably send out the recording as well. Usually people who register get a recording of the call as well. So pillar one is meant to really strengthen your general chart reading skills and to help you develop your capacity to spot the most important themes in a natal chart with relative ease, right? Because when we're first learning astrology, we really need to learn all the nuts and bolts. That there's just no other way to get into astrology. I think a lot of people, when they first read about sun signs and then they start studying astrology, they don't realize just how much technical detail there really is. So you learn, what does sun in Virgo mean? What does sun in the sixth house mean? What is moon in Leo, right? All of these pieces. But what happens from there is sometimes we have a way really of losing the forest for the trees, right? So as you reach more advanced levels of competency, you need to be able to start seeing the chart in a more holistic manner. So that's really what we're focusing on this first pillar, to help you transition from someone who knows about planets, houses and aspects, to an astrologer who can read charts holistically, right? It's really about learning to distinguish what's just a nice little detail versus what really matters, and being able to kind of cut into the chart in some way without getting completely overloaded by information. So this is really the aim. It's kind of like, where do I even start to look? So I thought we would do a little example. Here's a chart. So when you come into a chart, for example, how might you start analyzing this chart? This is audience participation, folks. Where would you even know where do you begin?
Okay, can I jump in?
Yeah, please.
Okay, I would start with the sun, the moon, the ascendant.
Yeah.
And
great.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a really kind of one of the good basic parts to start. You kind of know that these are important archetypes. So in this case, you suddenly get three different archetypes. Great. So it's definitely one great way in. Tamika?
I would look at the elements and sort of if someone has a lot of, so there's water, right? We've got some heavy Scorpio over there. Actually, this looks like my chart, which is hilarious. I often look at the elements and start to see how they're balanced or not.
Fantastic. Absolutely. Elemental balances, right? That's a big one. Maida, yeah. Oh, can't hear you. You're muted.
Right. Sorry. I would also look at the rising sign. I find that very helpful. And then I'm in the process just trying to figure out, and then the houses, and I'm in the process of picking a house system that I feel comfortable with. Yeah, because it changes so much, but I'm steering towards something that includes the midheaven, so Beaver, Porphyry, Sidious, but I think Porphyry. I do like the whole. So yeah, I would go to the houses and then the aspects, and house placement and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, house placements are a big time thing. And yeah, I'm glad actually you brought up the houses, because I forgot to explicitly remind myself to mention this. People always ask us what house system we use when we teach the course. We teach the course in Placidus and whole sign houses for the most part, but both me and Astro Butterfly, who creates a lot of the course material, well, most of the course material as well, are quite house system agnostic is how we usually care. So we definitely appreciate different types of house systems, which is why we try to kind of bring in both perspectives, the two main ones I think that are being used nowadays in the course material. So you see them both, and definitely the debate and discussions around which house system to use comes up a lot during the course.
I think I'm intrigued by the nodes of the moon right on the ascendant descendant would speak to me hugely about the way forward in this soul's life versus what's the past that they're really needing to uplift or make more whole rather than just dragging back to repeat more of the same for this incarnation or earlier, wherever. But
Yeah.
that's where my eye goes to.
That would definitely stand out because they're kind of conjunct, because they're conjunct the angles. I mean, that's definitely something that makes it stand out particularly. Okay, a couple more comments, Alice?
Yeah. Hi everyone. I was about to say also, so yeah, exactly what was being said. Right now to look at any planets conjunct the angles and any stelliums and in
Yeah.
which houses the stelliums would be involved in.
Yeah. That you guys are great. You're really literate in astrology. But you realize also how it's all kind of like, okay, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then this. And the reality is that's the reality of reading a chart, right? There is a lot of information, right? And sometimes some things stand out more than others, right? And so it's really about starting to develop some structure around how am I going to go in and make sure that I'm kind of putting the rake through the sand and catching the most important details, right? So one of the things that we really try to encourage you is to help you learn to get a feel for a chart when you just first look at it, right? By stepping back and looking at it as a whole, right? We start to look at the general distribution of the planets, right? Are they primarily in the Eastern Hemisphere, on the Western Hemisphere? Are they gathered in a corner? Are they spread across different houses, right? Is there the modality and the elemental emphasis, I think is a huge part of that as well. Are there any outlier planets? That's a big deal thing as well. You know, so when we look at this one, right, we see a really strong focus on one side of the chart, right, one hemisphere, except for boing, right? We have this like Jupiter that's just kind of standing out there in the side, right? So we're going to know that this is a really self-driven person because their planets are primarily on the Eastern Hemisphere. But that outlier planet is going to really show us a strong emphasis and focus, right? This is what we call a bucket chart. A bucket chart is when you have all of your planets on one side, except for one outlier that we call the handle of the bucket. And so, yeah, Jupiter in Gemini, right? Jupiter's a planet about creating meaning, and here it is in the 7th house of relationships, right? So we know that for this person, creating meaning out of relationships will be incredibly important, right? This chart actually belongs to Brene Brown. I don't know if any of you guys know who she is, right? A social worker, researcher. She's got some very, very famous TED Talks. Actually, she's one of the case studies that we use in the course material. And her research is very much on kind of how people are in relationship vulnerability and shame and kind of trying to study these things and really understanding it. So the way the course is structured also, we look at lots and lots of concrete examples, sometimes famous people, sometimes not, because you really sometimes need to step away from celebrities. And that really helps you gain experience in chart reading. That's a big part of the idea in terms of the methodology of the course, the kind of pedagogical approach. So yeah, so in that first pillar of the course, we present you with kind of a 7-step process to help you structure the way you kind of first come in and approach your analysis of a chart. And then in pillar 2 of the course, so kind of modules 4, 5, and 6, this is where we start to get more specific with chart details. So it's kind of pillar 1 is about stepping back, getting the whole picture of the chart. Pillar 2 focuses on how to zoom in and to know where to zoom in. Because again, you can kind of go into any detail of a chart and go down this well of detail, right? So it's kind of understanding where to look, when, under what, depending on what the question is and that kind of thing. So in module 4, we learn how to deep dive into a particular planetary archetype or planetary placement so that you can gain a deep, thorough understanding of the planet's or archetype's expression. Module 5, this is definitely my favorite module in pillar 2. This is a deep dive into the houses, angles, quadrants, house rulership, which is so important. And then also this issue of different house systems in use. as well as other tips and advanced concepts that kind of help you go deeper into that analysis. Let's look at another example. I like looking at charts. So here's one. So say we wanted to analyze this chart to understand the relationship style. Where might you start to look? So most like what planet might you focus on if you're looking at relationship style?
Venus and Mars.
Venus and Mars. Yeah, Venus definitely, I think, is the planet of kind of how we relate to others, and it's definitely about our self-worth, right? But kind of what we feel that we bring into relationships as well. So it definitely tends to be quite prominent in a relationship reading. And this is, and here if we, and Mars for sure, Moon, I'm also saying definitely. In the end, who are we kidding? We bring all of ourselves to our relationship. Right. So it's not like, so again, it's this idea of like, okay, where do we even begin? Right. And in this one, we might look at that Venus, and it's in Gemini. It's at the top of the chart. What might we say about Venus and Gemini? Kind of relating, does Gemini do?
This one person might be sort of public speaking. Or they
It
would
could
talk.
be good at public speaking, but yeah, so this is, and definitely could be great speaker, right? So here, though, if we're just trying to understand approach to relationships, though, more specifically, because this is one of the big things that we talk about in Pillar 2. It's kind of like you think about, how am I focusing my chart reading based on what I'm trying to figure out, what the question is, right? What's the point of emphasis? Derek.
Well,
I would say that Venus and Gemini is probably really curious and probably a little flirty, because Gemini is like all about quick motion and action. So they're probably interested in a lot of different stuff kind of all at once.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's definitely one of the, right? Gemini is ruled by Mercury. It's a very shifty planet, right? Tamika says flighty, all over the place. Yeah, oftentimes we'll think about Venus and Gemini like, fickle, like, this one, then that one, right?
is there a way to raise hands here? Excuse me for interrupting.
Oh yeah, there's a little like kind of electronic thing at the bottom. Sometimes it's harder on an iPad, but you're welcome to just interrupt me.
Okay. Okay, then for me, I would also look at the aspect of Venus to Neptune in the second house.
Yes.
And there will be an influence there in terms of either the at-one-ment or need for kind of a spiritual viewpoint, or maybe even issues surrounding self-worth. But also needing to be very communicative, because Geminis love to talk and engage in conversation. And so for them, maybe in relationship, they may enjoy talking about spirituality on some level, or self-worth, or issues surrounding a philosophy. I don't know. That's more ninth house things, but that's just one thought.
Yeah. No, and Neptune can have that really idealistic, almost dreamy quality, right? We often talk about Neptune as being the higher octave of Venus, right? So it's like Venus being one-on-one love, Neptune being more, universal love, right? So it has a way of refining that Venusian love and looking for the ideal partner as well. It's a trine, so probably works for them. Probably makes them quite nice as well.
And one other thought, if I may. For me, the moon is so hugely important in terms of how one does a reading, that, okay, for instance, this person, their moon is in Leo, so they thrive on being seen, on shining, and certainly in the 11th house of people. So it wouldn't be surprising if they're a performer of some kind. But for them, in relationship style, they would want to feel admired and perhaps have their ego stroked a little bit. And then that bounces down to Chiron in the 5th house of creativity. So they create from a place of their core wound, and they bring healing through their creativity. So I think all that pulls into it as well in terms of relationship style.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, great. Yeah, no, definitely. I think that it's very hard to talk about relationships and not talking about your moon, I think, but so iPhone. Maida?
Yeah, I also see the sun trine Mars and Mars conjunct the seventh house. So that would be someone who maybe takes action in their relationships as well. Like they're not only like their approach to relationships will have some sort of aspect or some sort of component of something that they do in order to relate to somebody, not necessarily just how they speak, but with the Venus in Gemini, it also has to do with how they communicate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a mode of connection with that through that communication, right? Like that communication ends up being the also kind of this piece that they think they really offer in a relationship, right? I think that our Venus sign always speaks a lot to that. Great, thanks guys, lots of good ideas. And one of the things that, you know, it's this that we go into a little bit deeper, for example, it's like the Venus trine Neptune, for example. We talk about applying versus separating aspects. What does it mean that it's an applying aspect instead of a separating? You know, does it make it, it'll maybe intensify that drive to merge, you know, the Venus with that ideal love, for example, right? We're going to see that more in the person's life, for example. Obviously, we get into the specific placement of that Venus. And again, this was just Venus. And, you know, we go further, like I saw someone drop it in the chat as well, right? More intermediate students, you'll definitely know to look at the seventh house, right? In addition to just Venus, right? Uh-oh, seventh house is empty. What does that mean, right? So, and this is where we get into that next step of reading house rulers. Like so just because a house is empty doesn't mean that there's no action happening, right? So we've got Pisces on the descendant, which means that the ruler of that house, or the traditional ruler of that house, certainly would be Jupiter, because Jupiter rules Pisces. And so we talk in the course about that, right? And then we can start analyzing how those relationships actually manifest by looking at that ruler. Now we see that this ruler, while you have Venus in a slightly fickle sign, the ruler of the seventh house is conjunct Pluto, anything but fickle, right? Not a quite different energy, right? And it's the planet of depth. We see also that Jupiter is square Saturn, right? Planet of commitment, right? So suddenly we're seeing that this person has a very strong potential for very committed and long-lasting relationships, right? Despite what just you might have gathered from the first step. And so that's really, you know, the kind of layering in the different levels of detail and how to start making sense of all of that, I think is really, it's really quite critical. Oh.
And would you think that there's anything significant with Venus stationing and just having turned direct?
So Venus is stationed retrograde right now. Yeah, there. Is that what you said?
I think it's just turning direct, isn't it?
No, the way it's the way my software, the way I've got my software set up, it has an S on there, which means that it's stationed, but it's red. The fact that the letter is red means that it's retrograde.
Yeah. So it's about to turn direct. It's stationing. It's about to turn direct.
It's about to. I'm sorry. Yeah, exactly. It's about to turn direct. Exactly. So it's stationed, which means it's just also exactly going to give it even more force. Planets that aren't moving very quickly really get emphasized in a chart. Yeah, exactly. Great, guys. This is the chart of it's Tom Hanks' chart, actually. And interestingly, he's been married for over 35 years. He's definitely like record length Hollywood marriage. So would be known for those committed relationships. Again, just by way of interesting example. Yeah, go ahead.
Would that have anything, because I go back to the Mars conjunct the descendant, so that would, and in and so the deep feelings, would that go to the solidity of the strong marriage, is that Mars being in the 6th house but conjunct the 7th, they're both in entertainment. They met when they were in the movies. Does that, yeah.
I think that could be the case. Obviously not everyone who has Pisces and, you know, have met through the movies, right? But yeah, absolutely could be an indicator. Also just Venus being in the 10th house of career, right? We also see a relating quality with the, you know, in this case, it's not the chart you know, the seventh house ruler. I mean, that's, so
No,
we know that he feels a spiritual connection also with the partner. Some is another way we could interpret the seventh house ruler in the 12th house, for example. So there's various kind of ways that we can cut in.
thank you.
I Chang, I see your hand has been.
Hi, I joined late. Sorry, I had spaced out on my time, but the Mars there in the 6 cusp 7 indicates to me that it's the mundane. It's the things that we have in our psyche all the time, or the things that we need to do every day, is how I understand 6th house.
Yeah. And this is in the 6th house, but it would, the descendant is 21 degrees. This is 17. That's within 4 degrees. And so for sure it's in the 6th, but the fact that it's conjunct the descendant definitely would be carrying a lot of that emphasis too. But you're right. Yeah, exactly. In terms of like a lot of energy being put into that 6th house of everyday activity. 6th house is also the house of everyday work, right? So we know that's important. And often planets that are conjunct the descendant describe our partners as well. So there's that kind of piece as well that we can link into it.
Cool.
So yeah, again, the idea here being we do go, as you can see, I mean, there's just all these different layers that you can go into interpretation. So that pillar, that second pillar of the course is really about disentangling some of these different methods that we can use to go deeper. And then again, how to integrate all the information that you're reading and off a chart. And then finally, we get to the third pillar in the course. And, you know, this is predictive techniques, astrologers' bread and butter, really, right? Sarah asks, why do I use traditional rulers and not modern rulers? We use both. I personally find traditional rulers more effective in certain types of house rulership. But again, it's one of these things where one of the things that we talk a lot about in the course that always comes up in all of the questions and the video calls that we do are exactly these kinds of issues. Why use this versus that? You know, is this okay to use versus that? And the reality is, I have things that over time as a consulting astrologer I've developed that I prefer to use and that I just feel are a little bit more accurate in terms of my own preferences. Others, we lean towards different techniques over time, you know, so we discuss a lot of that, and you're going to be in a class with a lot of other people who have quite a bit of experience. So it's always really interesting to hear different people's perspectives and to see what kind of works for you. There's very few things that I have a steadfast, like, no, that's just not true kind of approach. It's usually about balancing different techniques, seeing which ones work a little bit better in some interpretations versus the others. So I think it's one of those issues that comes out throughout the course as astrology. It's full of debates, right? Which house system? What? It's constant.
Thanks for letting me know. Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, so yeah, so while the first two pillars, they're focused on analyzing the natal chart, in the third pillar, we add this component of time, right? And one of the really important things to remember about predictive techniques is that they show us kind of when certain parts of our chart come alive at different times and periods in our life. So yeah, what predictive techniques is an umbrella term for all the astrological languages that can help us prepare for the future, but they're not just for prediction, right? On the contrary, I'd say like 90% of how I use predictive techniques in my consultation practice is to better understand the past and the present, right? So we definitely emphasize that part about the different techniques and the role that they really play in helping to disentangle and understand where the person's at. So yeah, we can use the techniques to go back into someone's past. And it helps us understand how different events have influenced them. We can go into cycles, for example. Yeah, and using these techniques to understand someone's history, it really has great therapeutic potential, and it can really help us make sense of past events, you know, find closure and see the bigger picture and identify recurring patterns. So when we go into predictive techniques, keep in mind that we really are using it very much from this perspective of trying to understand the person better and meet them where they're at, also, and to always help make meaning, you know, and interpretation of where the person is today and the things they're kind of dealing with. So yeah, we cover a ton of predictive techniques in a really short time. Like that's it's a lot. And some of these you guys are probably some of you are familiar with. Usually, most of you are probably familiar at least with transits. You know, we cover transits, we cover eclipses, solar returns, progressions, solar arcs, and annual perfections. So those are the big ones that we cover, and it's over the course of 3 weeks. This is normally where my head scrambles, says Sarah. Yeah. So, and that's it. It's like kind of going through, teaching you how the different techniques work. If you are new to all of them, it can be difficult to absorb and become an expert in, you know, of 6 different predictive techniques over the course of 3 weeks, of course. But you have the material there, you know, we expose you, we give you different opportunities to practice them, and you can start to also, you'll find that certain techniques resonate with you more than others. I believe they all work great, but there's definitely some that I lean on much more than others. And the idea of kind of exposing each of these kind of major ones, which are the major ones that most astrologers use, is so that you can also start reflecting on it, practicing them, seeing which ones speak to you. Yeah, Burke asks, will we cover rectification of a chart? No, we don't cover rectification. Like, so how to, that refers to like how to rectify a time of birth if you're unsure of the exact time. Although solar arcs is a technique that's used a lot in rectification. So it's one of the major techniques that's used for chart rectification. So definitely learning the technical aspects and techniques can then help you as a stepping stone to go in and understand rectification. Maida.
I found Vedic astrology to be the best place to go for rectification.
Cool. Yeah.
Not that I do it myself, but I've had it done for me, and it was quite interesting to how precise they were.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. The rule of 3, this is something else that we cover in the course, which is like part of the reason of becoming fluent in different predictive techniques, is because one of the things we're always looking for are recurring themes and messages that come through the different charts and the different predictive techniques that we use. That's why it can be so useful to be fluent in more than just transits. You know, it's like, okay, you'll see all these different transits, but then when you see it again in the progression chart, when you see it in the solar arc charts, it's like, aha, okay, we can start piecing together the information, and it gives a much more holistic picture of what the person's going through. Okay, yeah. So the course, it's not just a library of theory and content. The idea really is to help you develop tools that you can apply in your own work. Okay, so the idea is to provide you with a, you know, generic yet flexible framework to read natal charts. And so in the end, it's to develop your skills so that you can figure out how to apply information. So we really come from quite a pedagogical perspective, trying to like to encourage you to develop your own trust in your own skills, right? So that you can then apply it. Because this is when you get to the intermediate level is precisely where it starts, you know, reading internet cookie cutter descriptions just stops taking you anywhere, right? So it's like you have to start learning the skills of how do I trust my own capacity to read and tune into the different parts of the chart ourselves. Okay, and so the course, I think probably the best thing about this course is the exceptional amount of one-on-one support that we provide. I think that's really sets the course apart from a lot of other courses. You have a private tutor that's going to check on you and answer all of your questions about the course materials and the assignments. So every week there's an assignment, you hand it in and you get actual human response to what you've written. So can help correct any things that you are clearly confused about, or will help you also answer any specific questions that you have. We also have live Q&A calls with yours truly once a week, where we go through different, any questions that have come up in the material, basically. And like I said, the half the great thing about this course is the other students in it. I mean, it's just full of people with interesting perspectives as well, and different opportunities to interpret things. And then we have these workshops that are also once every 3 weeks. And those are kind of, we put you in breakout groups, and that's meant to, again, give you practice with interpretation. So yeah, weekly Q&A calls, workshops. What else do we do? Oh, there it is. We do quizzes. There's the little quizzes. Those are kind of meant to help you check your knowledge. So what happens is every week you get the online content, and you can go through that information. There's like little videos that you can go at your own pace throughout the week. Then we have the Q&A call once a week to answer questions that have come up as you've gone through that material on your own. And again, Q&A calls, if you can't make them live, they're always recorded. You can always watch them later, or you can just ignore it. Yeah, I don't get offended. I don't know if you've seen them or not. Then there's the little quizzes, and then there's these assignments, which are written assignments that you hand in, and like I say, and then get feedback. And so every week you will have those things that you're kind of expected to do. So it is quite a fast-paced course that kind of keeps you accountable, if you will. Now, needless to say, you don't have to do the assignments if you don't want to, but in order to get the certification, you have to do all the weekly quizzes and all the weekly assignments. And what else? Nuts and bolts. Starts January 10th, ends March 19th. The kind of general structure we have is that every module comes out on a Wednesday. That's when you get all of the video content that you can start watching. I do my Q&A calls usually on Sundays. Then by the end of the week, so by Tuesday, you send in the weekly assignment, and then the new module comes out the following Wednesday. That's the general structure. And yeah, so I think, so the kind of thing that we offer is that it is for this higher level, which I think is quite necessary in the astrology teaching world. The one-on-one support, 100% NPS score. NPS scores are net promoter score. So that's like a research metric that basically says that we're quite popular. People who take the course 100% say they would recommend it to a colleague or someone else. So we've taught this course for a number of years now, and a lot of the graduates have become professional astrologers. And so this was one of the very first questions I got, why some of you have heard that this is the last time that we're planning to offer it, at least for the foreseeable future. It's because really we're going to focus on shorter courses, kind of 3-week courses. The reality is that the 10-week courses take a lot of time and energy, and even though they're very popular, we're limited in how many we can offer. So we're going to be shifting to the shorter classes for the next year or two at least. Julie asks, at what time are the Q&A calls? On Sunday, or what time on Sundays for US churchgoers? So I'm in the UK, and for the American, if we have enough Australian students, we do 2 times, and we alternate times around the week, in week to week. But most of our students tend to be in the US. So and I usually do them at 6 o'clock. So it's like noon or 1 p.m. Sundays for Americans. And thank you, Tamika. And if you can't make them, then you can always watch the recordings. And so there's always opportunity to kind of send in written questions beforehand. If you're not going to be able to be there live, I answer them live. And then you can watch the recordings afterwards. And oh, good. I love it when we have some UK people. If when we have enough students that are in Australasia, we'll alternate times. We'll do one in the UK mornings, which is the evenings for them, and then the following week we do it for American time, which is midday. But it kind of depends on the registration, if there's enough to justify. And then we have the live workshops. Those are I think there's 3 of them throughout the course, and those are usually on a Tuesday, I believe, but we haven't set the time yet.
Tuition and scholarships availability, yay or nay? Like a needs-based scholarship.
Needs-based. I don't know that. Yeah, you could write into. I don't manage the business side of it, so definitely contact info@astrobutterfly.com. That would be the place to write in for it. Will there be verbal presentations? Jasmine, what do you mean? Do you mean from students? Oh, no, you don't have to. So it's no, the jazz no, it's the Q&A calls are live. They're like this basically. Some people write in the chat box, some people speak up, you know, and then we all try to guess whose chart is what, who's hiding and who's not. But that's the way. And really, and also the course material is they're little videos. We also always supply transcripts for them. Like we're really quite attentive to the fact that people have different styles of learning and that they kind of absorb materials in different ways. Okay, what else did I have here? Oh, these are comments from the course that we've taken before. Yeah, frequently asked questions. What house systems do we use? What's our astrological approach? Like, because I know that traditional astrology is quite in vogue in some schools right now. Also, we're very much, we come from a more psychological astrology perspective. Humanistic astrology is one way that you talk about it. But really, I think that we use traditional techniques, some, you know, things like house rulerships and annual perfections, for example, stem more from traditional astrology. We teach some of those, and then we do a lot from a much more modern astrology perspective. So again, I think that one of the things that's quite interesting about us is just how we draw from a lot of different schools of astrology. Okay, what else? Any questions that I can answer for anyone? No, I'll see you all there then.
I saw where somebody asked about if this is recognized by the something Astrology Association.
Oh, I didn't see that. The International Astrology Association.
Yeah.
I missed that question. I'm sorry. I don't think so. No, I don't think so. There isn't really a single regulatory system anymore, you know? So really, yeah, I mean, the reality is, you know, it's not the equivalent of an I think they have their own kind of system and there's different astrological bodies, but no, it's more just from our school, just a certification. Just it's really more of a sense of you feeling like, okay, I've gone through a more comprehensive, structured read through and study of astrology. So that's really the main purpose of the certification. And cost, I can't believe that I don't have the most basic detail.
The tuition.
Does anyone know?
I think it said, did it say 3 or 290? 3?
No, I think it's more in the 700 zone.
Oh,
But
so.
gosh,
No,
I can't believe I don't have like the answer to like the obvious question. So if you go to this link, I'm sure that you, in fact, if I could click to it, I could just look it up right now. Oops, I just unshared my screen instead. I'm like notorious for ignoring the details like that, which isn't very Capricorn of me, but $270 a month. There it is. So yeah, in total, I feel like it works out to around $750. It's something in that zone. And Mercury retrograde, yeah. Tell me about it. So, but yeah, if you go to that link for sure, I'm going to pop that link into the chat as well so that you guys can go to it and look it up. I don't mean to try to be occult about it. I'm not trying to hide it. I just don't manage that side. There it is. Okay, guys. Any other questions I can answer? No. Great. Well, I hope to see you guys there. It is a really fun course. It is quite intense. It's kind of like pow, 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 1 week, next week, but it's kind of starts off like, oh, look, we're just integrating information, stuff, and then it's kind of like tons of techniques. Try this, try that. So it's fun, and it's a fun cohort always. We just finished one and coming to an end of one and ready to teach the next. So hope to see you there. Feel free to email if any questions come up, and see you soon. Happy holidays, everyone. Happy end of the year.
Happy holidays.
Bye, guys.
Happy holidays, everyone. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you
very
guys.
much. Bye.